LWO1 WeatherNet. Liftoff conditions looking pretty good.
ESTS is ready for launch.
Ignition. Liftoff.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Ten, 9, 8,
Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
T-minus 30 seconds.
At T-minus 30 seconds, let's listen into the terminal count and watch as Falcon 9 takes our stack of Starlink satellites out into space.
Stage 1, press for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Falcon 9 is configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff. Guidance speed Apollo 11 Marshall Collins. Made a proceed with exploration with on.
Successfully lifted off from Kerbal Space Force Station, carrying our stack of Starlink satellites to orbit. The next event coming up here shortly is Max Q. Max Q is the maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle sees on ascent. So throttling down those engines helps us pass through that large structural load.
Vehicle has reached maximum aerodynamic pressure.
And there's that call out that we passed through Max Q. In about a minute, we'll have 3 events happening within seconds of each other. The first will be MECO, or main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation, and SES1, or second engine start 1. Now, MECO is where we shut down all 9 of the engines on the first stage.
MVAC engine chill has started.
Just a call out that the MVAC chill has begun on that second stage engine. So for MECO, we shut down all 9 of the engines, and that slows the vehicle down in preparation for that second event, which is stage separation. Stage separation is where the first stage separates from the second stage, and first stage will begin its journey back home, heading towards our drone ship Just Read the Instructions, while stage 2 continues on its journey with the third event, SES1, or second engine start 1. And that is where we light up that MVAC engine, and it propels the second stage along with the Starlink satellites towards its drop-off orbit.
And MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
We had MECO and stage separation. On your left-hand screen is a view from the first stage. On your right-hand screen is a view of that second stage engine. You kind of saw a glow of that T-TEB, that green flame, when we ignited that engine. We're coming up on fairing deploy here shortly.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And there you could see confirmation on your screen that we have successfully deployed those fairing halves. And as a reminder, we will be attempting to recover the fairing halves today with a contracted recovery vessel named Sheila Bordelon. On your left-hand screen, it is a little dark over there on the East Coast because it is nighttime, but we did get some glimpses of the sunlight hitting those grid fins. See if we can get some more views of that in a little bit. As stage 2,
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
as stage 2 takes our Starlink satellites to their targeted drop-off orbit, stage 1 will make its way back to Earth by executing 2 burns. The first is the entry burn, and that's where we light up 3 of the 9 M1D engines, and this will help to slow the stage down as it re-enters back into the upper parts of the Earth's atmosphere. The second of those 2 burns for that first stage is called the landing burn, and this is where a single engine, the center engine, will reignite and bring the vehicle speed down rapidly in order to touch down on that drone ship. As a reminder, we are attempting to land on Just Read the Instructions tonight. And those M1D engines do have a thrust of 190,000 pounds, so that lighting up that one single engine slows the entire vehicle down just enough to touch down on that drone ship.
Vehicle's following a nominal trajectory.
Now, if you're just catching up with us, we had a successful launch of Falcon 9 from Cape Canaveral Space Launch Complex 40, and you're looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 second stage. And on your left-hand screen, there is the first stage. It is a little dark. You can see some glimpses of the nitrogen gas burst that you see there.
Stage 1, FTS is safe.
Stage 1 entry burn.
And you can see on your left-hand screen, the entry burn has begun as those 3 engines light up that view for us. This entry burn will last about 20 seconds long.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And that concludes...
Stage 2 continues to follow a nominal trajectory.
That concludes the entry burn, and then we also got to call out that stage 2 is still nominal. The next event coming up will be in about a minute from now. That'll be the landing burn, the start of the landing burn on the first stage. And what you're looking at live on your screen is a view from the second stage looking aft at the MVAC engine. That MVAC engine has a thrust of 220,500 pounds of thrust in a vacuum. It's very, very powerful engine taking our Starlink satellites to their targeted drop-off orbit.
Stage 1 transonic.
Still getting good call-outs on that first stage. Stage 2 still looking good.
Stage 1.
The landing burn has begun. Let's watch and see if this Falcon 9 can land on our drone ship. Just read the instructions. And a really cool onboard view.
Stage 1 landing light deployed.
And there you can see the first stage Falcon 9 has landed for its 7th time. This marks our 81st successful recovery of an orbital class rocket, and again the 7th flight and 7th landing of this booster. And then we heard a good call out for SECO. That's second engine cutoff.
Nominal parking orbit insertion.
And a good orbital
Expected
insertion.
loss of signal, Cape.
Now stage 2 is going to coast in this orbit for the next 35 minutes or so. So while that happens, we'll keep you posted on where we are in the coast phase. We'll see you back here at T plus 45 minutes for a second stage relay.
Acquisition of signal, Newfoundland. Expected loss of signal, Bermuda. Expected loss of signal, Newfoundland. Acquisition of signal, Goon Hilly.
welcome back to the webcast for our 25th Starlink mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. We had an on-time liftoff at 11:44 p.m. Eastern Time. We had a great stage separation with first stage making its way back to Earth, landing on our drone ship. Just read the instructions for its 7th flight and 7th landing for this particular booster, and our 81st landing of a orbital class rocket overall. Stage 2 completed the first of the 2 burns, and now we're coming up on the relight of the second stage engine once again for SES-2. This will be a very short burn. It's just 1 second long, but it gives us enough boost to get us to our targeted drop-off orbit. We should get a live view here. May not look like much because it is only 1 second long, but we should be able to see SES-2 as well as kO-2, which is second engine cutoff. And there was SES-2 and kO-2. As I mentioned, it was very quick, just 1 second. We are waiting on confirmation of good orbit here.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And there is that call out. We have a good nominal insertion. Again, our Starlink sats will ultimately end up in a LEO or low Earth orbit about 550 kilometers above the Earth's surface, which is different than your typical geostationary or GeoSat, which orbits roughly 36,000 kilometers above Earth. Now we have another 15-minute KOS phase before we deploy our next batch of Starlink satellites into orbit. During this time, the spacecraft will start to spin, giving the Starlink satellites the momentum that they need to space themselves out over time after they deploy. So while this happens, sit back and continue listening to those super awesome space jams. We'll see you back here at T+1 hour and 3 minutes.
Expected loss of signal, Diego Garcia.
Welcome back to the webcast for our 25th Starlink mission. We had an on-time liftoff this evening at 11:44 p.m. Eastern Time. Our first stage booster had a successful 7th flight, as well as landed back on our drone ship. Just read the instructions for the 7th time, and that marks our 81st recovery overall. Stage 2 has already completed its 2 burns to enable reaching the targeted drop-off orbit, and now we're coming up on the deployment of our Starlink satellites. That should be coming up here in about 30 seconds or so, and we are hoping to get a live view of that deployment. As we pass over ground stations, sometimes we lose that live view, but hoping to get the live view right when we deploy the Starlink satellites. And there they are on your screen. An awesome view from space. You can also see how the second stage is spinning. This does help with the satellites to separate once they do deploy.
Starlink deploy confirmed.
And there you can see and hear that call out that the Starlink satellites have deployed as they are drifting away from the second stage. Now you may notice a slightly different look of these sats on this mission, as some have been painted white for thermal reasons. This will not impact the satellite brightness since the painted face is facing away from the Earth. And just a reminder that this is their drop-off orbit, so shortly they will deploy their solar array, and over the next few days and weeks they will distance themselves from each other and use their onboard ion thrusters to make their way to their operational orbit. And that brings our webcast to a close. Thank you to the range and the FAA for supporting today's mission. If you're interested in Starlink service, head over to starlink.com and sign up. Thanks for joining us, and have a wonderful night.